Welcome to my monthly reading recaps. In 2025, one of my goals is to read at least 2 fiction books each month. Usually I read quite a bit of nonfiction and forget to read fiction, so that's my goal, to try to spend more time reading fiction books this year. So each month I plan to recap in a video everything I've read that month, with the exception of the books I'm reading as research for my own book that I'm writing. I'm writing a nonfiction book, so I have quite a few books that I'm reading every month to research for those topics, and so I will not be adding those to this list. But otherwise, anything I read or reread, I plan to just put up here so that at the end of the year I can see kind of what all I've read and what all I maybe have learned throughout the year. So the first fiction book I read this year was Olga, This Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. As I'm editing this video and have headphones on and can actually hear my own voice, I think I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Her name is Xochitl Gonzalez. Just a little bit about the book. Set against the backdrop of New York City and the months surrounding the most devastating hurricane in Puerto Rico's history, Xochitl Gonzalez's Olga Dies Dreaming is a story that examines political corruption, familial strife, and the very notion of the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. I really loved this book. I found myself reading it a little bit more slowly so that I could spend more time in it, because I just knew this would be one of those books that at the end I was going to be so sad it was over, and that definitely was true. It goes through multiple points of view of the different characters, but it really is mostly Olga's story. And I really liked the way that it flipped between different points of view and included letters from one of the characters to get their story in there as well. There was a part where I was like, I don't want to read from this guy's point of view anymore. And then something happened in that chapter that was like, oh my gosh, that's why I have to read from this guy's point of view, so that I know that that happened. And yeah, so I really loved how it was done. I thought it flowed really well and made a lot of sense. Even with it flipping back and forth so much. It also really did a good job of including real life events. It includes Hurricane Maria, it includes talking about gentrification in Brooklyn, so it talks about a really big set of big problems in the world, but you don't lose the story of the characters in there throughout those real life events. So I really liked how that balanced. I also really liked the character development. Olga is 40 in the main timeline of this story, and I don't know, most of the books I read, people are mostly in their 20s or maybe 30s, and so it was nice to see, life that actually doesn't end when you're 30. You could still have a book written about your, fictional character well beyond age 25, so that was really nice. Yeah, I just overall really loved this book. she has another book out, so I'm gonna read that too. She also went to the Iowa Writers Workshop, so even though she is living in Brooklyn, we do have a little bit of a Midwest connection to this book, so that's great. Would I recommend this book? Yes, please check out Olga Dies Dreaming. It's a great book. I would reread this one actually, so I really liked this one. Okay, the next book I read is a little bit out of character for me. I don't really usually read rom-coms or romance, but this author is local to my area and she had a book signing, and she's also a New York Times bestselling author, so it's kind of abnormal to have like a New York Times bestselling author in Omaha, Nebraska, but she is. So this is Lynn Painter's Accidentally Amy. It just got re-released. It actually was first written as a serial on her newsletter, so I really liked seeing that creative process. And the book also is like somewhat set in Omaha, so that's pretty cool. She's going to Scooter's Coffee, she's driving on Dodge Street, so things like that. Omaha doesn't really get representation a lot, so that was cool. Yeah, she was very funny and quirky at her book signing, and that definitely personality-wise pops through in her characters. Very funny book, very quick book to read. Most books I read are usually like very serious subject matter, as you'll see as I continue to go through these books. So I do kind of think I might try to read a little bit more of these like rom-com-y kind of books. This is the kind of book that like it's really easy to fall asleep after reading. Not necessarily the case for all the rest of the books I read this month. So would I, suggest this book or recommend it to people if you're into rom-coms? It was a funny, quick read, and especially if you're in the Omaha area, it's cool to support a local author. So it's actually, signed by her and everything, so pretty cool. The next book I read, this book is incredibly well written. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I will read a little bit about it here. Based on the real story of a reform school in Florida that operated for 111 years and warped the lives of thousands of children, The Nickel Boys is a devastating, driven narrative that showcases a great American novelist writing at the height of his powers. This book was so good. It won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 2020. You know, well deserved. That's actually Colson's second Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. And so I'm actually like so mad I had not read this book yet. This does a really great job of bringing in like a real historical event and making it very personalized through the stories of the characters so that you can really feel the emotions, but also balances like not just making it traumatizing too. There's mentions of really bad things happening, but you don't really have to like sit in that too much, which is good. It's not just like a book about brutalizing kids. It's, you know, it talks about the story, but it also humanizes them really well. So I think I really liked how this was written. It's also currently a movie. It's nominated for the Oscar for Best Picture, actually. And I watched it and I really liked it, but the style is very unique and very hard to follow, I think, if you had not read the book. So I would definitely recommend reading the book. Even if you don't plan to see the movie, I recommend reading the book. It's pretty short, so it doesn't take too long to get through. And it's just really, really well written and really great. It's hard to not spoil what happens in this book because the ending is so good, but it also makes you see the entire book throughout like a different lens and like in a different light. So I'm trying not to spoil it because I had been spoiled somehow in this book, and so the end of it was like really rewarding to get to. So yeah, definitely recommend that book. And then the next, this is actually the last fiction book I read this month, Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. I will read a little bit about this one as well. With empathy and piercing social commentary, Such a Fun Age explores the stickiness of transactional relationships, what it means to make someone family, and the complicated reality of being a grown-up. It is a searing debut for our times. This book also jumps back and forth between two points of view, which at first I really liked. And by the end, I'm not going to say the two characters' names because I don't want to spoil which one this is, but one of the characters' points of view becomes so unbearable to read I almost did not finish the book. So that's good writing because like it's hard to write a character, I think, that's that unlikable, but it was rough. It was almost unreadable because of how her brain is. And so I just really didn't want to be in her brain anymore. There are a lot of really good points in the book. I think it kind of shows like this theme of like you don't have to compete to be the best ally. That actually makes you kind of a shit ally. So that was a great theme throughout the book. There's a lot of things that are discussed that are really, you know, necessary and really timely. And yeah, I think it's a really well-written book for the most part. I would have liked to just have the one person's point of view by the end of it because I could not stand being in the one character's brain. I think that becomes obvious as you read it, but I don't want to spoil it. And then yeah, there were a few word choices in the book that really were disappointing for me. I think disability is left out of the conversation a lot when we talk about social commentary, and that definitely popped up in this book. The words handicapped and hearing impaired were used in ways that were not great. You could have used different words. And a variant of the R slur was also used, which I'm reading it in 2025. This was written post, 2000. There's really not an excuse in my mind to be using that word without it being like a commentary of some kind, and it really wasn't. It was just used as an insult. You could just use a different word. So that was a bummer. But overall, I do think I like the book. I also read this the most recently, so I haven't been able to sit with the story for as long. I liked where the characters were left. I liked the ending. I just really could not stand being in that one lady's brain. There were also weird things about weight throughout it with her character that I don't know, I just really didn't want to be in her brain anymore. So the other character, it was great. Like those chapters I really enjoyed reading, and the contrast, it was just so rough. I don't know, there were good points made in the book. Overall, would I recommend it? Yes. Just know that one of the characters, because it becomes increasingly hard to read from her point of view. This author also spent time at the Iowa Writers Workshop, so another little bit of a shout out to the Midwest. She actually lives in Philadelphia, but another person who started writing in the Midwest, so pretty cool. And then there are 3 other books I read. I read Create Dangerously. This is a 1957 speech that is still very timely. So I read that this month. I also reread Life of the Party by Olivia Gatwood. This is a book of poetry. I actually reread this as I was writing a sample script for a program that I was applying to. I don't know, I've read this many times in the past few years. She really kind of looks at true crime and how we consume true crime and what that does to us as women, watching violence against women produced by men primarily. So yeah, there's just a lot that I think about with this book, and so I return to it quite a bit. And I don't really read poetry that much, so good job, Olivia Gatwood. This is great. She actually has a novel out that I just bought, so probably that will be in February's recap, because I just thought this was, I mean, every time I read it, I find something new and I like it. So, and then if you know me personally, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about this book, but I also reread This Radicalize You. You can just take a guess what day in January I reread this book. But really, anything Mariame Kaba writes, I'm reading it. I'm reading it multiple times. I'm learning something new from it every time. Every book of hers is on my shelf up there, and a lot of them, the seams are like busted up because I'm reading them so much. I just really like how she both includes a lot of theory and a lot of understanding of the world, but also pushes you to do more than just sit in your room and read a book. To change the world, you need to do more than just read, but you do also need to read. And so I do like that balance that she strikes in her writing. And Kelly Hayes is in this book as well. I really like her, inputs in the book. I wasn't sure how like a co-written book would go, but it reads really well, obviously. I recommend this all the time. I pre-ordered it. I mean, I'm like the biggest fan. And so Kelly Hayes also has a newsletter on Substack. I think it's called Organizing My Thoughts or something similar to that. So I definitely look that up and subscribe to that as well. She has a lot of great information, especially for this time we're living in. So thank you if you're watching. Yeah, I will link my Substack below if you're interested in reading some of my writing. I try to post about once a week, and hopefully I'll be back next month staying on track with my goals. I tell my ADHD self, do what you need to do to stay on track with my goals. And so thank you for watching, and I'll see you next month.